A digital pulse report from the Australian Computer Society that said there's going to be over 1 million Australians working in the technology sector by 2024. The Tech Council of Western Australia, which is one of the sort of preeminent lobby groups for the technology sector, has actually said that in the near future, Western Australia will have more IT positions than resource positions, which is a massive paradigm shift for Western Australia. And so in order to encourage people and to get people into these roles that we need, in the second fastest growing sector in Australia, there's a few different ways that it can be achieved. So there's retraining people, attracting people, and training people. So firstly, the training aspect is making sure that we have a healthy pipeline of graduates, of students coming through and taking up technology positions. We know that there is a massive gender gap in the technology sector, not just in Western Australia, but across Australia. I think it's around 31%. So really, the government does have a key role here in trying to attract women into the sector. I think there is a fairly antiquated stereotype when you look at technology. I think people kind of envision that nerdy guy in the basement, sort of like a mushroom growing in the darkness. Yes, there was a time and a place for that. But look, the sector is different. It is diverse. It is moving on. So the US is further along in this conversation. They haven't quite got that gender balance right, but they are further along than Australia. The other element of that around training is trying to encourage people with neurological disabilities and physical disabilities into the tech sector. There are a number of roles that are coming out, that are emerging, that are fairly repetitive, but also very important around like data labeling. And there is a number of people in the disability sector who want to enter the workforce, that could fulfil these roles, and these very important roles, and they should be encouraged, and that's where the government can help join those dots and get them into those positions. The main part here, and the retraining aspect is, so there's 120,000 workers that are needed across the sector, which represents 9% of the population in Western Australia. And so of those 9%, people are in industries who want to actually move to the technology sector and basically do a sort of a midlife career pivot. And the government has a role to play there in skills and training recognition in order to help make that transition much easier for them. And finally, Acting President, the attracting people into Western Australia. This is, as the Minister mentioned, we do have a bit of an image problem in Western Australia. We are a mining state. That's what we're known for. But we do have a lot of success stories in the technology, in the innovation space. And I don't think we're very good at sort of blowing our own horns in this space. Certainly not as well, not as loudly as the Americans. And we are competing in a very globalised industry as well, and it's certainly being compounded from the pandemic as well. The pandemic has changed how we are working. We're moving into a more distributed working environment, and the tech sector and the innovation space has certainly been on the forefront of that as well. But what that means is we're not just competing. It's not just an East versus West equation. We are competing in Western Australia for top-tier talent to come to this state from other countries as well. We are very much behind being competitive for salaries. A lot of people, we do suffer from the brain drain aspect. There's the brain gain, the brain drain. We suffer very much from the brain drain. People are chasing golden handcuffs, going overseas, working for US tech companies that can really, that Australian companies right now aren't competitive with in terms of salaries. So WA needs to really think about what are our strengths, what can we do to try and attract people over here, how do we stay competitive? If we can't do it on salaries, then certainly maybe we can do it on lifestyle, but this is something that the government really needs to think about. How do we get the right people here? How do we attract them? And also, how do we retain them? There was a number of people coming back to the state after the pandemic. Borders were shutting. I think the impetus was to come home to familiar ground. WA was, for all intents and purposes, free. And now the borders are open. There is an element here around trying to make sure that people are actually staying in Western Australia, and that capital isn't, that brain capital isn't going overseas and chasing other opportunities.